welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute delight to be joined by the fabulous Donna Dupont. Donna, welcome.
Thank you, Kim-Adele, for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. And I know that we could probably get really stuck in really quickly, but before we do, let me just share with those listening and watching a little bit more about you. So Donna is a futurist, a strategist, and an award-winning designer with over 25 years of experience helping leaders prepare for what's next. As founder of Purple Compass, she guides organizations through uncertainty using systems thinking and strategic foresight. Her work spans climate change, health security, and public safety, exploring complex risks and capturing insights for action and impact. Donna has earned 7 government awards and recognition from the Canadian Defence and Security Network and the Association of Professional Futurists. She brings deep expertise and engaging stories to help audiences think differently, act wisely, and with intention shape more resilient futures. I love that. I've got so many questions, but before I start, could you just bring that a little bit more to life for us, Donna?
Sure. So my journey was a very unusual one. I started off very early on in my career in healthcare, passionate about working with people, helping people. And my focus was trauma, critical care, but I also did outpatient diagnostics to help people take charge of their health. And a lot of my patients had chronic health disease like asthma, COPD, emphysema. So it was early on that I was really about helping people take charge and power, their health, their future. But that work also transitioned over time because I started to study health policy, and one of the biggest turning points in my career was the SARS crisis, because I was working in hospital. This is my first emergency, and I was at certain points within my rotation, I was in the SARS ward, and it was one of those situations where I got to see a health system in crisis and a lot of uncertainty. And at the time I was studying public policy. So once I graduated from public policy, I thought, okay, I want to work to help health systems in terms of planning for the future, navigating change issues, and really helping people get access to care. That was my intentionality going into public policy. And I had a wonderful 12-year career in public policy, in primary health care, public health, and emergency management. And it was my time in emergency management because we're very anticipatory in our thinking. We have to anticipate what's going to happen so that we can make decisions about what types of resources, logistics, operations we need to mobilize. And it was in that time I started to see patterns, constant patterns that you see in emergencies. No matter if it's a flood or a wildfire or a health emergency, there are common vulnerabilities patterns you see. And I started thinking, what if we can anticipate in longer time horizons? Wouldn't we be able to make better decisions around investment and helping protect people and communities and really navigating the complexity? So that's where it started. From there, I had a lot of conversations. One of them was about strategic foresight, which I didn't know you could study foresight systems and understand futures in a very different way, and to be able to explore it with intention to really help transform systems. So that was the journey, and it's been fantastic ever since. I've been working with a lot of organizations in Canada and around the world to apply this thinking to help shape systems and to help organizations move through a lot of the change we see today.
Oh, wow. I love that, because I think often when you're in these different, and yours are much more different than mine have been, transformational changes in organizations rather than impacting people's health and kind of those level of crisis. But you do spot those commonalities. You start to have that ability to see between the gaps, don't you? The gap between the gaps almost, that you can only see without studying it. You can only see with the benefit of hindsight, because I think with the benefit of hindsight, we have 20/20 vision. I often say the world makes so much more sense in the rear view mirror, and you're like, oh, right. But am I right in thinking you've kind of almost taken the learnings from that, what's happened historically, and what did they learn, and where did they find the space between the space to start looking forward to identify where that might pop up. Would that be correct?
Yes, it's so important, because when you're thinking about the future, you need to check in around what you've learned from the past.
Yeah.
And it's about understanding what worked, what didn't work. It's without judgment. You don't want to judge, because sometimes we take actions because we don't have all the information, but we can learn from the experience, and we can reframe that learning and make it helpful moving forward, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what new actions we can take, or things we can explore that might be better suited moving forward. So that's important, to do that reflection.
Yeah.
And really mine that knowledge and wisdom from the past, and reshape the narrative that's more empowering towards the future, and in terms of how you can apply it. But you also need to apply that the past to the present, to understand what's changing. What are these signals of change that are putting pressure and a lot of uncertainty for people and organizations around the world, and how is that going to shape the future? So it's this dance between past, present, and future that's so important, and it requires you to not always be in reactive mode. You need to create some space to be able to step back and reflect and see the bigger picture, and have conversations about what if moving forward.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I think it's that it's that intentionality, isn't it? I love that your piece you talked about making sure that the lessons from the past are done from an empowering point of view, as opposed to from a blaming point of view, because that's not going to help anybody. And that just creates a culture where people daren't make a mistake again. Whereas when we go, look, we didn't know, but we know now. So how can we take that new form knowledge and take it into our next moment? But also that instead of responding in a reactive way, to actually reflect and respond, because that could be so hard to do, can't it? We've brought up a society that assumes the minute I stop talking, you're going to start. So to take that moment of pause and really reflect, and then speak, then react, takes a real shift, doesn't it?
it's a mindset shift, and it requires awareness that you do need that pause, whether it's a pause in the moment or a pause, that is a little bit longer term pause. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's a little bit longer, because it's a much bigger decision.
Yeah. So how, why is it, so important for people to be aware of their mindset towards the future when they're thinking about how they address challenges like this? Because I guess for those challenges, you're very conscious of what's happening right now, as well as trying to think about, and how do we solve this, but also how do we move to where we want to move or need to move to next? So why is it so important for people to understand that?
It's so important because our mindset, the way we think, shapes the decisions we make, right? So if we have a mindset towards the future that is one that is less optimistic, say it's pessimistic, or it has a more of a negative outlook, right? With low agency, then you're going to feel like there's nothing you can do about what's happening. You're not going to think about, okay, yes, this disruption's happening, or these changes are happening, but you're not going to look at it from a lens of opportunity, right? You're not going to look at it from a lens of how can we adapt to the changing landscape. You're going to feel disempowered. Yeah. You're going to probably be in a fear state, and you're probably going to resist change, right? Which we see a lot. We see a lot of that, because when the fear comes up, it's a powerful emotion, because we, naturally, we don't like change. We're very comfortable with what we know, and the unfamiliar, the unknown, is very scary. And that's a primitive wiring that's in our brain, it's in our body, and it comes up not just in our thinking, but our emotions. So it's really important when you have, these strong emotions, you need to step back and say, okay, what am I thinking here? Where is this coming from? Is this correct? Whereas if you have a more optimistic view of the future, and I'm not saying utopian, but looking at it from, okay, yes, this is not great, but how do we need to organize? How do we need to rethink? How can we leverage these new opportunities? Do we need to pivot? Maybe we need to reconsider different parts of our business, embrace different, new elements. So it's an openness. It's about looking for opportunity, and it's a growth mindset. And when you start to have a growth mindset, as you know, you see things differently, and you're more open to ideas and conversations that can really spark, perhaps a new innovation, a new approach, a new strategy that can be transformative. So it's important. It's your internal compass. Your mindset's your internal compass that shapes not just how you see the world, but how you engage with it.
Yeah, because you're in that fixed mindset space, then you get to fear faster than if you're in that growth one. Because we all get to fear, whether or not we're fixed or growth. We don't get to avoid fear, but I guess it's how we respond to it, isn't it? It's whether we respond to it as the doomsday, it's all over, there's nothing we can do, or this is scary, but actually there might be opportunity for us to navigate that. And I think one of the things we think we're all very rational, very logical human beings, and yet neuroscientifically our emotional brain responds 24 times faster. So that fact is our emotional brain has responded quicker than our thinking brain can, and therefore our thinking brain can be just rationalizing what our emotional brain has told it. So does that therefore influence our choices, the fact that our emotional brain is there quicker, and we might not necessarily know or acknowledge that? How can that shape the choices that we make?
Well, it definitely elevates certain ideas, certain opportunities, openness to change, versus eliminates. A lot of times when there's fear, there is a lack of openness to even exploring a topic, because it's already decided. There is a belief attached to that emotion and that mindset. And maybe that belief is something that came from the past, a past experience, but it requires bringing that belief and assumption to the surface. To ask yourself, is this true? Like, maybe it was true in a different context, in a different circumstance, but is this still true today? Because it's our own beliefs that really hold us back. And a lot of times it's so buried under the surface, and we don't give ourselves time to really bring it to the surface, right? To understand it. And so it can influence our choices and our decisions. And you'll see it most often reflected as a lack of openness to even exploring a topic or exploring an opportunity. And because there's already a decision made, there's already assumptions and beliefs attached to it, and done. And that's a very closed way of looking at any, whether it's from an individual or an organized perspective, because the world is changing very quickly.
Yeah, it's almost like the only constant these days is change, isn't it? And like, I fully get that we're in our comfort zone and we don't like change, but actually one of the things that makes me smile sometimes is, how long has this been my comfort zone? Because it's changing that fast. That today is something I would have been uncomfortable with 6 months ago, or 12 months ago, because the world's moving so quickly. So we're almost a kind of in that constant flux, aren't we? And for some people, they can find that probably invigorating. Somebody say to me, like, how is it that you can cope so well with so many life changes? Now, it's not that I cope well with them. So I don't like lack of control. I said, so when I look at things that I can't control, which, often the world throws things at you, doesn't it? Like these, huge challenges that you're facing around kind of, what is coming next for health security, for public safety, for complex risks. I'm talking about navigating my life in general, but you kind of like look at them and go, I can't control everything. So I look at, is there anything I can control right now? Is there anything I know right now that's for sure? And then I do that thing. And if I keep doing that thing, eventually you see other things, don't you? You change your vantage point.
That's right.
Is that something that you see in the work that you do?
Absolutely. It's really important to understand which point are you looking at in terms of the future. For example, many people are stuck very much in firefighting mode or in the jungle of constant tasks, assignments, issues, and they can't see at all the forest from the trees. Like they can't see because that their world is very narrow. But if you give yourself space, you can start to pull back and see things from what we call a mountaintop.
Yeah.
Or the 30,000 view perspective, which gives you a very different perspective, right, on what's changing, what's shaping, because it allows you to step outside of your day-to-day. And of course, there's the visionary perspective, right? And usually visionary people are really transformative thinkers. They're thinking way beyond. But it's good to kind of understand which mindset you kind of fit into in terms of, are you more day to day? Because that's a very management oriented mindset. Nothing wrong with that, but it can be limited. So you want to challenge yourself to think, okay, how can I go from the management operational to more the strategic level? Right. And I mean, this can be done at an organization, but it can also be done for your life too. You can think about what's happening broadly that is important to me, or where do I want to shape my own personal future self vision? Where do I want to go? What's my North Star? And so it allows you, as you said before, to have different vantage points, different perspectives, and then you can start to shape actions today. Like, what first step, what action can I take today towards that pathway? Towards creating the change that I know that is, that I can do, that is, within my control. And on the journey, there's going to be a lot of surprises. There are always surprises, but that's part of the growth and the excitement of personal transformation, even organizational transformation.
That's so true. I often say to people, like, life loves to give you a plot twist. And the reason I use the term plot twist is nobody cares about plot twists in a book. They're exciting, aren't they? But when we look at our life and we go, oh, it didn't go the way I wanted to, that's just a plot twist. It'll all come back good. It's like you've just got to roll with it in that moment. And I think it's to your point, I lived it looking at those vantage points, and knowing where you are, because visionary leaders can be absolutely transformational, because one of the things they can see is where everybody else is.
Yeah.
And actually one of the big things, a bit like it takes a village to raise a child, it takes the village to make the change. If you don't understand where everybody else is, the full change won't get embedded, because some people will be stuck in fear and kind of sabotaging your success. Would that be fair?
Sometimes you can see that. Yes, there are situations where some don't want the change and they will sabotage, they will fight against it. There's a lot of resistance to change because it's the weight of the past. And those people that resist change, they may benefit from the status quo. It's working for them and they don't see any problem with it. But maybe for, it depends on the perspective and the issue, but maybe for others, this is no longer acceptable. We need to change for a number of reasons. And so it's challenging because, again, it's that tension between the push of today, the weight of the past that kind of bounces around. And if you don't have a strong vision of where you want to go, even if it's still aspirational, there is no pull forward. You just kind of want to stay put, right? What you know. And you're right. It can be based on a fear mindset, 100%. But it's an opportunity as well for change. And for people who don't change, organizations that don't change in a global space that's rapidly changing with technology, and we see the geopolitical change and the economic changes that are happening, social changes as well. If you are not changing, with those changes globally or broadly in mind and adapting, then you're kind of falling behind in a way, because when things do shift, you're going to feel the pressure to catch up. And there is a term for that. When people feel that there's too much change happening and it's creating so much stress that it can't adapt, they feel psychologically unstable, right? And it's called future shock. And it was a term that was coined by an author, Alvin Toffler. He was a futurist. There was the famous book over 50 years ago on future shock, but it very much speaks to what we're going through today, where you're right, there is change happening. It's accelerating. Some people are on board. They're open. They're nervous, but they're open, and others are resistant. And so you will have that divide, and it'll come a point where then those that are resistant may be forced to catch up and to change. And that can be very, very stressful on people and societies.
I think, and I think there's a lot going on. There's a lot of complex people issues that you're trying to address, as well as those social, economic, and environmental issues. And that's a lot of different hats to be trying to kind of support. And I think for me, one of the things I learned many years ago was that perhaps one of the number one skills of being a good leader was to become comfortable with the uncomfortable, or to become comfortable with the uncertain. And whilst it's never completely comfortable, for it just not to take you to fight or flight, to take you to elevation, but we can do something about this. So from all the work you've done, are there any top qualities that are needed to be able to be in that place of being able to get more comfortable with the uncomfortable or the uncertain, so that you can lead a way through?
Definitely. When you are exploring uncertainty, it's different for a lot of organizations, because they're typically focused on risk uncertainty. And when they do risk assessments, it's all about reducing uncertainty. They do not like uncertainty. But when you recognize that there are some aspects that we know, that we can say for a degree of certainty that this holds true, and that we feel confident. There's a high degree of confidence in these insights because of, past and present. That's good. That's good to know. And then you need to then open up your thinking around, okay, we know things are changing. What is new and emerging? And so it's more of a holistic perspective, because now you've got to think, okay, this is our organization, or this is the lens that we're taking to understand what's just outside that lens, adjacent, and what's changing, what's emerging, and what does it mean? Like, how is this evolving, and how can this potentially disrupt, or it can provide new opportunities for leverage to transform how we do our work? Technology is a really great example of leverage for transformation, but it depends on how people and organizations apply it to whatever workflow or whatever service that they're in. But there's a lot of different opportunities, but you have to have that openness, that mindset of openness to explore what's changing and to enter into conversations about what if. And not just do it with people who are familiar with your business, but bring in new people who have different perspectives, right? So the outsider perspective, or maybe adjacent industries, or maybe it's someone from the tech world that's doing something different, but you can see a potential for a hybrid between, the different types of options, tools that can be integrated, right, in a different way, but it requires collaboration. So it's a different mindset. It's a different way of engaging in strategic conversations. And it's about exploring. It's not about predicting, but it's about these are things are changing. This is what we think potentially could evolve. Let's have some strategic conversations about what that could look like and how we could adapt and maneuver or pivot, or maybe we transform certain things. And so it's an opportunity to just have dialogue that can ignite a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
Generation, a lot of creativity, imagination, which, a lot of us tend to not get those opportunities very often. And that's what you need for innovation, is that space, a safe space to have those types of conversations.
I love that, because I think it's right. They're the things that we tend to almost take for granted. We can feel guilty if we've booked in creative time, because that doesn't feel like that's that productive, and yet it's probably our most productive, isn't it, when we take a moment away from the noise of life and go, actually, we're just going to sit, and particularly what I love about the way you're talking about it is bringing in those adjacent industries or adjacent organizations. It's not about creating, it's about co-creating. It's about bringing those bits in and going, I wonder what you can see that I can't see, and I wonder what I can see that you can't see, and I wonder whether or not if we shared that together we'd see the thing neither of us can see right now, but we'll be able to see because of that openness, because of that willingness to learn and see the art of the possible. And so it really allows you to kind of, to your words, explore rather than necessarily ideate or solutionize. It's exploring the art of the possible in that first instance. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. You can explore, you can have conversations. Some of those conversations might turn into ideas that you can park or you can mobilize, right? So it just depends on where you're at, what your goals are, but it's just creating opportunity to have those conversations and having those rapid type of deep problem solving loops that you can co-create with others. And that's really what's needed when you're looking at very complex challenges in a rapidly evolving world, is you need to have space for this, but you need to have divergent cognitive thinking on it. You can't just have one way of thinking. You need to bring in other people. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of groupthink.
Yeah.
And you're going to have the same answer. And so if you want something new, you got to bring in other people that are going to see it from a very different perspective, because they're coming at it from a different lens, a different angle. And so it, like I said, it's this opportunity to have these conversations. And I love what you said about learning, because in these types of rapidly changing environments, you're continuously learning.
Yeah.
You have to continuously learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? And it's true, because if you think you know it all, you are going to be surprised when, things don't shape or unfold the way you expect, and you'll be taken off balance. It could be, blind. You could be blindsided, right? So it's really good to, explore the complexity with humility and recognize, while you do have a lot of knowledge in one particular perspective or one element of the system, you really want to look at the system from understanding what's changing and really exploring what that means, right? And so it's a learning opportunity. And so if you can come away from these experiences with new insights that you can mobilize, that's powerful.
Yeah. That is so powerful. And that brings me to one of Nan's favorite sayings, which was, make every day a school day. So yes. Learn something in every day. Donna, I cannot believe that we've gone through half an hour. It felt like 5 minutes. I've got so many more questions, but I'm very conscious of time. So can I ask you to share with our audience who it is you help and how they can get in touch with you?
So I work with a variety of different organizations, government organizations, but also businesses that really want to help navigate complexity and uncertainty. And I work a lot with leaders who are championing change. So for anyone who's interested in my work, they can connect in with purplecompass.ca is my website. I have an offering called the Future Intelligence Lab and a guide that they can download. And this guide is really helps people build their anticipatory thinking so that they can move from anxiety from the future or about the future to more agency for impact, and being very intentional about how they're engaging with important conversations, and really to help them move through the complexity, sometimes the chaos, but really get on the other side to feel more intentional about the change that they're making.
Amazing. I'll definitely be going along and having a look. But for everybody listening and watching, if you didn't get a chance to scribble all that down about Purple Compass and the resources, please just check the notes below, because all of the details around Purple Compass and around how to get in contact with Donna will be right there for you. Donna, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you so very much for coming on and sharing your insight and your actionable advice to help us move forward to a brighter future. Thank you, Kim. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I can't wait to kind of listen to the podcast. And if your audience has any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm always interested in people's thoughts around change, whether it's from the personal or the organizational perspective. Amazing. Thank you so much, Donna. And to everybody listening and watching, I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I did. And as Donna says, if you have any questions, please do get in touch, and I will happily forward them on to Donna for you to get answers. And until next time, take care.